Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Coast-to-Coast Combat Hour. I'm your host, Matthew Hawkins, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Ed Carbajal. Ed, what is going on, brother?
Well, I'll tell you what, definitely becoming a your level fan of BKFC after last Saturday, man. I mean, they're on a tear. David Feldman had some real nice flex. I know we're going to get into UFC 301 probably closer to the end of this podcast, but you were there. A bunch of shit happened that we got to talk about. Um, but yeah, man, talk about something refreshing to see in the fight game.
No, I'm glad that you're finally coming around. I'm glad that most people are coming around,
Mm-hmm.
because and Feldman even took a little jab at the media a little bit, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I came on here promoting in the beginning, we were kind of, I think most people kind of looked at it like this is just going to be a fad that's going to last a couple weeks, and then everybody's going to ban it, and we're going to move on. Where the total opposite has happened.
Mm-hmm.
They're opening up in multiple more states. Um, I think
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if Texas is next. And I say that because slap fighting is going there for legalization right now, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that I know that the key for BKFC is that they're piggybacking off of that, um,
Mm-hmm.
and they're getting on the dockets in these states and stuff. And the I want to say the powers that be that run slap fighting have the power to make sure that they get legalized. And basically, while that happens, they can't
Yeah.
deny bare knuckles. So it's an
Yeah.
autumn. It's basically doing all the work for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's funny that you say that because even without that, even if that wasn't a factor, and whether it is or not, I mean, there's nothing that you can say for 100% that that's the case. But outside of watching them shadow the approval and stuff like that. But one thing that David Feldman said in the post event press conference after Knucklemania 4 was somebody asked him something similar, like, "How long do you think it's going to take for other states to finally open up and get on board with what you guys are doing?" And I mean, and I'm paraphrasing, but his point was, every like we just said, when you watch these events and they happen as they happen, they become these highlight reels. Eventually, everyone's gonna want to see. Everyone's gonna want to get on board. And like when he did take that shot to media, he was like, you eventually you're gonna have to cover it. And it's the same thing with the states. Like eventually they're gonna want that revenue. They're gonna want that fan base to come in, and eventually they're gonna have to open up. Um, you know, for folks I mean, Conor McGregor takes breaks wind standing in line at Starbucks, that makes news, and the news that they announced at the event was that McGregor is now one of the co-owners of BKFC along with Triller and God knows who else. So that's a pretty big feather in their cap, especially after um McGregor did this. McGregor hasn't fought in a while. He did this movie. It was like one of the top movies streaming on Prime. And now, my buddy Jeff, who listens to the podcast regularly, shout out to Jeff. He asked me the other day, um, when do I think John Jones is fighting next? And I was like, my answer was, and you and I have talked about it. I said probably in November because UFC wants to bring these mega cards, at least one mega card every quarter. We just had 300. McGregor is going to be the International Fight Week quarter, so the final quarter would have to be Madison Square Garden. Why not have John Jones? He's from New York, and that just all came out of the top of my head after talking about it. But I'm saying all that to say is that part of these mega cards, like even McGregor coming off of losses, he's still drawing in people to International Fight Week. You, who wasn't going to go, is going to be living out of your backyard after that event. You're still going because like there's something about the man that, Feldman said, the guy's got the Midas touch. Everything he touches turns to gold, regardless of what you want to say about his competitive nature, whatever. I mean, the guy, whatever he's passionate about, he goes in 100%, and it seems to be profitable for folks that are involved with him. So BKFC is one of those things.
Yeah, doesn't hurt. I mean, I've been vocal about not being a
Mm-hmm.
huge McGregor fan. A lot of that has to do with just living in the world of social media, though, and knowing more than we really need to know about a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, You know, I feel like if McGregor was in a different era, I would look at him perhaps differently. Um, just because I wouldn't know of everything that's going on. I wouldn't be hearing his voice every day. I'd just be watching him fight, and probably be happy to see him showing up in movies because you're not going to see him every day. It's kind of how the old school, how it was. But nowadays, yeah, he's a mega star. He's bringing it. He's going to bring eyes to BKFC. I like them saying that they're going to sign people. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's money in the fighters' hands. Um, I think the number one thing we've always talked about since this bare knuckle revival started while we were doing the show was, hey, we're cool with it as long as these people are paying the fighters.
Mm-hmm.
We had the one organization that fizzled out and apparently had some really shady shit going on where people didn't
Mm-hmm.
get that event. I think they maybe did one, maybe two shows, and then it naturally selection kind of eliminated them, and
Yeah.
UFC stands alone right now as BYB's doing well. I have heard no complaints about them either. They're much
Mm-hmm.
smaller production, but I've heard nothing bad about them. So it's nice to see that they're paying their guys. Feldman's up front seems to be pretty accessible to everybody. Um, and it just the show they put on is worth the money that they charge for it, and the excitement is different than what we've gotten used to in boxing and MMA. It's
Yeah.
different. Like you said, it's a little niche that it's a little different, and it adds some excitement.
Yeah, and it's getting a little regular lately. Like I said, after the event, I said something on Twitter. Um, I just wanted to. I don't know if you know who got the awards. I know you were there for folks that didn't listen last week. Matt was in house at the event because it was in his neck of the woods on the West Coast rather. Fight of the night: David Diaz versus Shane Jordan. Um,
Hard to argue. Great fight.
yeah.
Went to a
So
draw.
yeah, and then he was really on fire about El Perro, Alfredo Argulo, who, um, you know, you had mentioned how he was coming off of boxing. I had my doubts about how he was gonna do after watching the fight. I mean, I was even still kind of like, yo, he's kind of shelling up and doing a lot of head movement, and then he gets the win that he got, and apparently, my people, Mexican folks, apparently are starting to really like the BKFC, and they just announced a deal. What else did they say about that fight? TV Azteca. So they got a deal with TV Azteca, which is a Mexican programming channel, and they're going to start focusing on that demographic. And he might be the guy. Like he might be the Brandon Moreno, the Cesar Chavez, like for BKFC if they can keep him there. And he's somebody that came from boxing, so like talking about the paydays and stuff. It was just the whole event was something else. And the other thing he said, I mean, you're talking about paying fighters. He said, like in the next 3 months, we should expect to hear a slew of new signings of names that we're fairly familiar with, and that's all he would kind of say after that. So the fact that he can say that, and he can flex a little after holding on to the business that long, says a lot. It says a lot.
Well, Mike Perry's making basically what UFC champions are making on paper right now.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're an MMA fighter, I mean, Mike Perry was a 7-8 UFC fighter. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, he found his niche here. So if you're somebody in the UFC who's getting paid 25 grand to fight,
Mm-hmm.
and BKFC, I go over there, I pay some dues, I get paid 50 grand a couple fights, and then all of a sudden I have a potential to be making $600,000-700,000 a fight, based off my name in
Mm-hmm.
MMA, just being violent. I mean, a guy like Angulo was for me was the highlight. It was a
Mm-hmm.
wild back and forth fight. There was even some hair pulling and stuff, which was at least it looked that way to me. The referee didn't catch it, but he went from starting with the fight with braids to or cornrow braids or something, and then not having anything.
Mm-hmm.
It just being free flowing mane. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't. He is 41, so I don't think he's going to be the Brandon Moreno necessarily in Mexico, but he doesn't need to be. He needs to win like 3 fights, win a title,
Mm-hmm.
and then that can bridge the gap between him and the guys like David Diaz,
Mm-hmm.
and some of those guys if they want. They've had shows in Mexico, Cancun. I don't know if they've done Mexico City. I know they've done Cancun at least once. Um,
Well, it's definitely on the radar. I mean, especially with what he said afterwards. Antoine, what's up, man? I saw your UFC question, and we're gonna answer that when we go over 301. But Antoine's asking, how much do you think Mike makes in BKFC? I guess like 700,000 a fight. You're close at 600,000. According to MMA Junkie, they got the payouts. He made 600,000 reported anyway. That was posted on Sunday, I think Sunday or Monday, by MMA Junkie, and yeah, and he's like, they're definitely gonna have him again. Speaking of Mike Perry, they were talking about possible matchups for him. Dave, who's Dave? Is it Mondell?
Dave Mundell. Yep, he's
That's
good.
the, because I thought um who's the guy that Gaethje fought in WSOF that's there?
Oh,
Palomino.
Palomino.
I thought him and
Uh,
Palomino would have gone at it, but
well, Palomino's coming off a loss.
mm,
Really, I think, and I think that probably cost him the fight. To be honest with you,
mm, mm.
so I think with
Still a
Perry,
fun
right,
fight, but yeah.
it's still a fun fight. But while Perry's undefeated, I think he's going to go for the names.
Mm-hmm.
Palomino's awesome, but he doesn't necessarily bring the box office. You
Mm,
know, so I think that these signings are what's going to be. I know Darren Till getting mentioned. He's calling out Darren Till.
yeah,
I mean, I think Palomino's a much tougher fight than Darren Till,
yeah.
but that said, Darren Till's problem wasn't necessarily standing. Darren Till would get taken down and get beat up by guys like Woodley on the ground. So standing up, maybe he's Mike Perry. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That's the we get some of these tough guys that kind of grew up fighting for a living, and you don't know what they're going to be when you take away the worry about submissions and takedowns. So
Yeah.
I loved it. The venue looked great on TV, looked great on film and stuff. Wasn't the best in my opinion for viewing, just because it's a theater. So
Mm,
while it only holds 7,000, it's 7,000 straight out as opposed to a bowl around it.
mm,
So I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I spent money to get good seats and didn't buy like the upper level, you know, front row mezzanine, because the mezzanine was far away.
mm.
It wasn't like an overhang, like an arena. It was like a wall of balconies in the back.
So now that you're giving me kind of like a mental picture of it, there was like a brawl or something that broke out. Were you able to see any of
He
that?
was right in front of me. Something on the stage.
Yeah,
I was coming back
and
from
there was a couple of
grabbing a
YouTubers
drink or something,
or something.
coming down. I didn't see anybody. Apparently somebody fell off the stage.
Mm,
And when I got there, I mean, it was a good 2 minutes of pushing, shoving, and
mm-hmm.
kind of, hey, is this going to get out of control kind of thing. And then obviously eventually it dies down. But that's just one of those things. They got YouTubers there. Those, you know what I mean? Like this week especially is exposed more of people just running their mouth.
Mm-hmm.
People saying stuff, and I don't know if it was another YouTuber, but the bottom line is it doesn't matter who it is. When you say something to a man or a woman who's got any pride in themselves, they're going to stand up for themselves and potentially could lead to this kind of chaos, especially when a bare knuckle event when God knows who you're talking to up on a stage. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
you
that's
know, it's a
yeah.
and even in the crowd. I mean, it's a Saturday night in LA. It's not, this is
That's one thing I never understood about this weird fandom that's entered the sport is these people, these weird like characters from the internet that, like, I remember always going to an event. If you went to an event, looked around you, even the folks that bought tickets, they're probably there to support some fighter that's on the undercard local. So chances are they're a trained person too that's watching. And now these people that are coming out of the woodwork that are just like talking sideways to someone that's more likely than not, if they really want to, because some of them are just walking away because they are very trained and they know what they're capable of. But you catch them on a bad day, it's going to be a bad day for you too. So I just don't get it. I don't get it.
Yeah, the stuff in person is something that I don't see a ton of yet. I mean, obviously you had the situation where Sarukian punched the fan who was Now, I'm not a fan of any of that stuff. I guess if he's paying money, to me,
Mm-hmm.
giving somebody the finger has always kind of been like the line. Like,
Mm.
you know, I don't know. Like, somebody's telling you to go f yourself. Like, at that point, like, where are we at? You know what I mean? Like, so I don't recommend
Yeah,
fighters punch fans, but that fan, you know, like, if that's my buddy, back in the day, I'm grabbing him and going, dude, like, we don't do that shit.
yeah,
Like I'm not, so I just don't think that exists. I think I don't want to say morals, but people's just
mhm.
gauge of what's real and what's not real is
Yeah.
non-existent. And
And
um,
that's to, I mean, I'm putting this up because it's 100% true. Antoine Willis just chimed in and said, I just feel like a lot of these guys talk shit online and have never been in a real fight before, and that's 100% true. It's that whole thing about you're tough behind the keyboard and all that, keyboard warrior, all that stuff. And I think being locked in for a couple of years because of COVID or what have you, we're gonna get flagged because I mentioned COVID. But, what have you? It's gonna be it just it puffed all those people up, and now they think now that it's over, you know, that they're not gonna have to answer for that. But yeah,
I,
man.
I think a lot of the online stuff and a lot of the fan stuff has always been there. Since day one of this
Hmm.
podcast,
Hmm.
we've talked about it. I've even felt bad for calling out MMA fans as like the worst fan base of all sports. I felt bad saying it because it's us, and it's
Hmm.
the fan base that I grew up with, and I don't want to say help develop, but I didn't, like it just got chaotic. And whether it was Lesnar, whether it was Ultimate Fighter, whether it was McGregor, it's always been there. There's
Hmm.
always been like
That's
this
true.
small
Yeah.
little toxic thing. I'm gonna say something that so I'm seeing a lot of people calling people out on Twitter now, and I think it's funny in a sense that some of the old trolls have now grown up and realized that maybe trolling's kind of foolish, and they're calling out the new trolls.
Hmm.
I think I'm not going to go any farther than that. I'm just going to say that some of the people that frustrated me over the years being idiots online suddenly now have like a change of heart and think that it's okay now that people have crossed the line. So
Hmm.
I want to say you guys kind of developed this with the who the fuck is that guy? No wonder people say stuff to
Hmm.
fighters like that. That became sure it was cool when McGregor said it. It was funny in the press conference, and then it became slang for every McGregor fan to say that to anybody who says
Yeah.
anything about fighting.
Yeah. Oh, who? Yeah. If you're slightly unfamiliar, or yeah, yeah, it's
You know
true.
what I
It's
mean?
true.
So like that's what developed this. So the who the fuck are you became I don't care about your family. I don't care about tragedies you're going to. Who the fuck cares? I just told a
Hmm.
fighter, who the fuck are you? So what does it matter? And we're
Hmm.
definitely going to get explicit lyrics on this one. But you know, like I mean that's
Yeah.
that's that's what it is. And I just think it's the culture and social media is now exposing it. And like I said, I think a lot of the people that were a little younger than us, who we were kind of frustrated with, now are
Yeah.
kind of grown up and realizing that now they're in their late 30s, 40s, 50s going, dude, like that's not cool. That's not cool. Like, yeah, I used to make fun of guys. Dude, there was a fighter who fought at UFC 2 named Fred Edish. And he was an alternate who took the fight on like 10-minute notice and came in and fought a guy who was like 80 pounds lighter, not 80, it's like 60 pounds lighter than him.
Hmm.
And he fell to the ground in a sense, kind of to pull guard. But back then, nobody knew what that existed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they called it fetal fighting. And it was Fred Edish Fetal Fighting Championship was a website that came out, and it was picture of Fred Edish in the fetal position, and he got mocked for years in the early days. Well, it turns out, he fell to the ground. He was actually defending himself the best he could for a guy that. I mean, he was basically shrimping on the ground to avoid a guy coming down and crushing him the whole time. That's what he was doing. He was a karate guy or a taekwondo guy,
Hmm.
So it goes back to day one. I mean, this is 1996, seven, when the
Yeah.
website was, Geo World and all this, and where it was
Yeah.
like blocks. And the one website I remember is Fred Edish's Fetal Fighting Championship. And it was just a page that was put out to mock a dude who took a bare knuckle fight in no rules MMA
uh,
he was like working camera. He was like doing lighting for the event and he stepped in a 16-man tournament. Like that's so disrespect has always been a part of
yeah.
this sport.
But the
Um,
thing of it is, I mean, the thing about that is, and I mean, we weren't didn't even plan to talk about this tonight, but it kind of led there. But because of the issue that happened at the BKFC event you were at, but the homeboy in Italy, the pizza don of MMA Twitter, Alzolino, he just put it out there what I've always said, what I've always practiced. Don't feed the trolls, man. Let them talk their shit because they're poking you because they want the response. And if you do it, if you fucking take the bait, you're helping make them famous. You're helping make them famous. It's like the Dana White media, these videos he likes to do now where he just kind of flexes on the media. And I get it, man. I get it. Like he did one for UFC 300 where he was like, everybody, and he compiled the video of all the people that were knocking UFC 300 and blah blah blah. And then at the end of the day, though, you're giving them shine. Now people know those names. You have a list of names folks that you're giving them shine. People are going to start looking at them to make fun of them, but you're giving them numbers. It's like buying back in the day when Two Live Crew had a CD burning parties because they didn't like Two Live Crew. But what do you say? You have to buy them to burn them, right? I mean, it's the same thing, man. It's the same thing. So your best bet is to not even let it roll off your back. Hit that mute on your social media.
Well, it's
Mute
funny
them.
when the trolls get exposed and photos start coming out of who these people are, because I can only imagine, like, I would never say anything like that, but I would hate to be somebody who actually goes to fights and now has to look over your back to make sure that someone's not going to try to get retribution for, you know, for one of these
Yeah,
people. You know what I mean? Like, dude knows
yeah,
we don't
and if you
like.
do
There's a
event
lot
cover,
of, and I'm not, I'm not advocating for anybody attacking anybody,
yeah, no,
but
but
the
you're
real
not,
world is the real world, and there's a lot of people who have been through tragedies similar to what went down this week that will not take kindly
yeah,
that if they all of a sudden find themselves standing behind the dude in line at an MGM Grand, or at the T-Mobile Arena.
yeah, and not media row like if you cover an event at the theater in the Garden or like all of Bellator's events. I've done it on Mohegan Sun and what's Long Island Arena. I don't know why I'm forgetting about it. All the venues I've done event coverage at, like outside of the Garden where they sectioned off media pretty good. The
Nassau
main guard,
Coliseum.
Nassau Coliseum, yeah. Like the fans are sitting right behind you. If you're one of these media characters and you get credentialed and they sit you in the same space and you get this little following for yourself where you're picking and like the security's not great. Security's some kid, with a walkie-talkie and a matching T-shirt of all the other people that are doing event security, and you're sitting there, and some guy decides to take issue with you because you think you're fucking funny on the internet, like you know what I mean? You're gonna catch something.
I wouldn't want to go. I wouldn't want to go to all these shows with 20,000 people around me and not knowing who might be doing
Yeah,
it. I mean, that would be
no, you're
crossing
right.
my
You're
mind right
right.
now.
And there's
I mean,
there's
I
there's
would.
guys that I'm like that I've done event coverage with, and I'm just like, yo, like the last PFL event, I was just like, I actually, they had a green room that was connected to everything, and I just sat in the green room. But these guys that want to be characters, they're not even doing any work covering the damn thing. They're there taking selfies and trying to do make funny shit while they're there. But I mean, I guess that's exposure now,
Of course.
But yeah, I mean, anyway, um, back to
Anyways, yeah,
BKFC.
back
Yeah.
to BKFC. Uh, great, fun production. Like I said, the venue looked great. Wasn't the best for seating. Weren't the best fights I've ever seen. We had some weird stuff happen that we're
Mm,
not. That's just it's part of fight game, but something I hadn't seen in this particular sport is some of the stuff we saw. I mean, we had one fighter who I believe he tore his bicep.
mm.
Looked like he had a giant bubble form on his arm.
Yeah.
Um, Lorenzo Hunt, while trying to get his third title and be the triple champ, gets dropped by Mick Terrell with it looked like a nice little kind of crafty little uppercut kind of shot,
Mhm.
and Hunt went down, planted his arm, and Shogun hooed it into an L
Mm.
shape, and that
Bad.
was all she
Yeah.
wrote there. So we had basically broken arm, messed up thing. A couple of the early prelims came out good, and then a couple people realized that this probably wasn't for them, which is
Mm.
normal in this event, especially in the
Which
early
is
first
weird. I
prelims.
mean, not for nothing. I mean, I don't understand. Like, one thing I'll say is like after I've watched enough of these because I do like the it's like their contender series that they show on Fubu Sports. The name is escaping my mind.
Prospect series.
The Prospect series. Like I liked watching that. I have a really good time watching that. But the thing I'm starting to notice, I'm like, which is, I guess, I mean, to Mike Perry's credit, the smaller ring and the circular shape of it, um, it's hard to. I saw it more in the Prospect series than I did at the main events, where the guys coming up that are the prospects in bare knuckle, they seem to have more like new or varied technique as to how to approach this type of fighting versus what I saw on Saturday night. Like Mike Perry's thing is just, I mean, not for nothing, the guy's a hammer. Like he's just gonna like if you can't hurt him, he's going to hurt you. You know what I mean? And that's literally what makes him so good at what he does. But like some of these guys that were just like I mean, our boy a good example of somebody that tried to exercise technique and it worked to his disadvantage. Fernando's fight.
Mhm.
Fernando Gonzalez, like he was trying to use the guy's aggression to lure him in, but the judges scored against him because of all. Nah, I don't want to say he was retreating because I could see what he was trying to do. The thing that they didn't. I don't think they called it a knockdown officially, but if you watch the video, he had his foot actually just misstepped. He folded behind him
Yeah,
as he was
they didn't
stepping
call that a
backwards.
knockdown.
Yeah.
I was biased, obviously rooting for him. Um,
Mm-hmm. Me
the
too.
judge who had it 50-45, I think, was on something because I don't know
Yeah.
how Fernando didn't win at least the first or second round.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember one of them, he landed like a huge punch and stunned the guy.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you're right. He tried to use too much technique, and I don't want to say it was kind of like the Paige Van Zant thing, but it was a little bit in a sense that um, they went with technique.
Yeah.
And I think it's an adjustment to that sport where it
Yeah.
has to be down and dirty dog a little bit, unless your name is,
What?
unless you're a world champion pro boxer,
Yeah.
like
Uh,
unless you're Austin Trout or somebody like that
no,
who's
I was
able to go in, you know.
I was gonna say, like you just said, unless you're a boxer, that's why Arguello did so good, because he is, and the only thing he did difference is he didn't back up so much. He stayed in the pocket and kind of swayed underneath everything. Versus,
But he took a lot of punishment in
he
the 2
did,
minutes that he fought.
yeah, he
Whereas Fernando, I don't even know if he had a mark on his face.
no,
So
no,
so while, like and I'm sure, Fernando took a couple shots, but it wasn't it was a different kind of fight. He tried to use the
hmm
technique and the judges didn't reward it. I think the judges in BKFC are going to reward the more
I feel like
animalistic kind of fighting a little bit.
I feel like for as far as BKFC goes, like when you look at judging like that, because it's the not varied rule set, it's just punching. So like it's like the beginning of MMA where judges weren't really, they don't really know that kind of fighting to score it the right way. I think that's what we're seeing in BKFC now. It's just like now you're gonna find judge like Chris, if Chris Lieben judged BK. I know he was refereeing that night, but if Chris Lieben's a judge in BKFC, I would trust his view of the match better. But we had Wheelock on here talking about judging anyway, so it's all point of view and stuff like that. But I mean, it's definitely something that it makes me feel like the early how MMA took 30 years to get where it's at. This is like the early part for BKFC, even though it's kind of been around since Cowboy times. Like,
Well, the
yeah,
good news for Fernando is that
yeah,
they announced the fight in his hometown now, or
hmm
well, in the vicinity where the town where he trains,
yeah.
Pachanga Casino in Temecula for or I'm sorry,
July
July
12th.
12th.
Yeah.
So there's another fight not too far around the corner. I mean, it only makes sense that he's going to be on that card if he wants to keep doing this.
hmm
And straight up, BKFC would be stupid to not have him. He
hmm
brought people to that fight. He'll bring people to Pachanga. He brings people to all the fights that he fights. He's got a good, the Menifee crew follows him,
hmm
and they support him to the end. Um, so that only makes sense. A win might have given him a headliner. Um, on that card. But
hmm
we'll see what they end up doing. It doesn't mean he still won't headline it if they're looking just to fill the arena and it feel like they're testing the waters everywhere now. They're
hmm
gonna they had the big show in LA at the really as big of a showcase as you can have. Not the biggest
hmm
arena, but nice place. American Idol stage and first time I'd ever been in the Peacock Theater. Um, so real, nice. So now they're gonna try the biggest casino in California
hmm
and see what how that goes. And every event that's ever been at Pachanga is at least been full. Whether it's successful or not, it's hard for me to say. But the Bellators to Lords of the Cage to some other weird stuff that they've had there, they always do well. So
Yeah, but many Bellator events. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, One thing, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure you know by now, but the main event with Tiago and Mike Perry. I mean, it didn't last long, and I mean, what was your take on that? I felt like it. I don't know. I don't know if I agree with the stoppage, but Tiago, like after the fight, when they talked to him at the post event press conference, he said, it was the referee saw something he didn't like, but he felt he could have continued, and then he said he's just going to go back to retirement after that because I guess
Well, he
you know,
stumbled. He fell
yeah,
over. Like that's.
yeah,
I was going to ask you if that looked legit. Like I don't want.
mm,
I'm not instigating anything because Mike Perry hits like a hammer. But it was
mhm,
it, so. The referee, I think it was Miragliotta for the main event, if I remember correctly. Um, but regardless, whoever it was didn't want to stop the fight. It
Mhm.
was not a fight that was. I mean, he got a long count. He got asked a couple times, "Do you want to fight?" Tiago didn't get up till like 8. Eight, and usually you have to be standing by 8.
Mhm.
Otherwise, so
Yeah.
he
Probably
was
close
given
standing 8,
all the
yeah.
benefit of the doubt. And then he asked him, "Are you okay again?" And he took a step to his left and he stumbled. And at that point, the referee had to stop it.
Mm.
But you know, it here's
So I mean,
the one that really bugged me was
mhm.
the Rothwell Duffy fight. We
Mm.
didn't get a chance to really. I didn't get into it too much. I tweeted it out after it happened. This should have been no surprise to anybody. Duffy doesn't want to fight. Hasn't wanted to fight for years, and he's basically Bob Sapp. Except Bob Sapp would try for like 3 minutes.
Mhm.
Duffy goes in there. The minute he got touched, he dropped. I saw some of the people on Twitter mentioning an investigation. Hopefully that happens because he clearly didn't want to fight. He had no
Mm.
interest in fighting that fight. He's had no interest in wanting to fight since Overeem put his knee through his forehead.
Mhm.
In 2016 or whatever it was, but that was that was it. So that was really frustrating because Rothwell was one where you're like, okay, like when that fight starts, you go, someone's going down hard, and then
Mhm.
you see a guy take a dive essentially, and I know he got hit hard early, and then went down, and then got up, and then he didn't. From that point, he wanted nothing. It was over at
Mhm.
that point. Talking about people who realize that this isn't for them. Duffy realized this is not only not for him, but he realized it a long time ago that he's just trying to weasel out paychecks, is what it looks like to
Mhm.
me. So I do hold BKFC accountable for even signing the guy because it seems like you had to be kind of under a rock to not see that one coming. Um, I
Well,
don't
I
know.
mean, they're looking for names to draw to because I
I
mean,
get it,
they're
but
yeah,
he
yeah.
wasn't. There was going to be against Ben Rothwell. If Duffy's fighting some garbage man from South Central Los Angeles, that's different. But he's
Mhm.
fighting. He's Rothwell. You're not going to beat Rothwell without getting hit hard. I mean, that dude. Talk about somebody built for this stuff. That Ben Rothwell
Yeah.
is. He's a gigantic man who swings hammers and
Yeah.
is not afraid to get hit.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know, but I look forward to them moving on with their other events. I mean, everything they're doing right now is good. Um,
Mhm.
from the celebrity, if fight celebrities there, actors in the crowd. I mean, I
Yeah.
know there's stuff like that, so it's great
And
to
their
see,
next
and it's good.
it is good, and I was looking forward to. I mean, I know she announced the day after the fact, but the Mohegan Sun event that they're going to do, Heather Hardy's fight is off because I don't know what the reason was. She said she was going to say why. I don't know if she posted an update on that, but so we'll see how that card shapes up now. But she was kind of like being on the East Coast. I thought that would have been a good draw for her, but I mean maybe they can rebook it. Who knows? Um, but they're definitely. I mean, the fact that they're going from your neck of the woods to my neck of the woods and doing other things, I think we're going to see talk about a lot more BKFC on this podcast, and I'm looking forward to what's coming from them next. But speaking of what's coming next, UFC 301 this weekend. Um, really quick, just because this is the question that Antoine had asked earlier when we were talking about BKFC. He said, "What's up?" and said, how do you feel about 303 Jamal Hill and Khalil Roundtree matchup? Um, honestly, I I feel like I get the mentality behind it, but Jamal Hill wants to get back on the horse because of the way he lost. It was his first fight back after injury, and then to lose like that. It's what these guys do. Even if the hobbyist, like you're in something. If you take an L, whether it be in the training or whatever, and you take a little break and you want to get back in there as soon as possible, because if you let it sit too long, then it sits with you and you think about it and it makes you doubt yourself or whatever. So I 100% believe that's the case with Jamal Hill. As far as taking the fight against Roundtree, um, I don't know, man, because that guy to me is scary. Like when the way he fights, he's such like a sweetheart of a man, but outside, but like when he's in there and you're the guy standing across from him, he's not nice to anybody. With some of the finishes he's done. So I feel like it's a dangerous fight for him, but again, I think he wants a dangerous fight because he just wants to like you're saying. Antoine just said he wants to scrub that fight out of his mind. 100%. Yes, that's the case. That's the case.
I love the fight. I think it's great matchmaking.
Mm.
I don't necessarily listen. McGregor doesn't let people fight under him on the fight card. So if
Mhm.
that's the best you can get for a co-main event, there's a part of
Yeah.
me that's okay with it because I don't expect it to be boring. I don't
Mhm.
think there's any way that fight can be boring. I cross my fingers we don't get some kind of fluke injury or something, in that fight or an eye poke or some crap like that. But
Mhm.
I don't. To me, that's a to me that's guaranteed fireworks. I don't see how there's not a finish in that fight.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, I don't know. Is it 3 rounds? I would love to see him make it 5 rounds. We're not going to get
Mhm.
a whole lot of other stacked fights on that card.
Mhm.
Just it's just the McGregor thing. He doesn't allow anybody to really spread the wealth.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
um,
you don't wanna get outshined by somebody. You can't put Justin Gaethje, Max Holloway type of thing. You can't do that with McGregor.
no,
He'd
that's why
probably
there's not going to be any title
yeah.
fights or anything like that under
Mhm.
him. So if
Yeah.
that's the thing, but I love the fight. I if it was, I wish it was the pay per view opener. If it were
Yeah.
my world, that would be what you'd fire up with, and somebody gets blasted, and you get the night rolling. But
Mm. Oh,
but
I wanna answer this because this is actually a really good question. Do you guys think BKFC makes it to ESPN type of level? Not yet. I don't think they're there yet. I also think the landscape of the way we consume media is still fluctuating. You know, streaming was king. ESPN Plus had their largest numbers subscribed because of the UFC being there, because of streaming and because folks locked in at home. But now with live event stuff coming back, I think pay per view hasn't completely died yet. I think I don't think ESPN will be the place to be for very long with all the other streaming competitors out there and everyone trying to get their piece of the pie. I think this thing with Jake Paul and Mike Tyson in July will be very telling of who can throw their hat in the ring to compete with ESPN. Because if you remember, there was a while, I want to say 2014, 2015, when Flow Sports had Flow Wrestling and Flow Combat came out of that, Flow this and Flow that. Like there was a time where people would rather have watched everything on Flow versus ESPN, and then that changed with what happened in the world. So I think I don't think anything's set in stone yet when it comes to what BKFC's future holds. They're comfortable with online stuff. They're on Fubo Sports. They stream their prelims on the YouTube channel. I think they know what they're doing. Triller, whatever the fuck with them, because who the hell knows what they're doing? I know supposed to go public or whatever, but they don't have the best track record. I think the McGregor co-ownership and David Feldman's more important to their direction than Triller is, but we'll see, man. That's a good question though. I mean, I think BKFC maybe to give it 10 years before any network wants to consider airing them. Like the USA Network or someone will probably grab them. You know what I mean?
yeah, I mean, I don't know if it'll take 10 years. But I
Mm,
don't think that anything will really pop off on ESPN while the UFC is there. I think that they will not allow that to happen.
mhm,
Um, and PFL is also involved with them, so they got their hands in some MMA stuff.
mhm,
But the door opens up with Conor McGregor, because if
mhm,
Conor McGregor wants to promote his that he's the owner of BKFC and they got a big event coming up, and
mhm,
he calls ESPN, he's going to get on ESPN.
mhm.
He'll be headlined front center on any show with Stephen A. Smith if Conor
Yeah,
McGregor wants to go on there and talk about BKFC. So
yeah.
there is an opening there for that, but I don't think you'll be seeing highlights on ESPN.
Mhm,
Um, you know, there was a time again before, with like K1 where they used to air it like at like midnight on ESPN, or
yeah.
like, you get like late
El
night K1.
Ocho. Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know if that's even a real thing anymore in this world, but I would
Mhm,
maybe that would be something where you maybe, that would be kind of cool. Like, hey, you come home from the bar on a Friday night and it's midnight, or 1 in the morning, you turn on the TV and there's some bare knuckle fighting on ESPN at
yeah.
2 in the morning, 1 in the morning. I don't know. That might be something but you're paying for the time. It's basically a paid. I don't know where the TV is at right now for that, but
Mhm,
um, like you said, you got Netflix, you got the Paul Tyson
mhm.
fight coming up. Amazon still's involved. There is a one championship this
Yeah,
Friday as well.
BKFC is actually on Amazon. Like anything that's free, like that's on YouTube, like that's on Amazon too. Yeah, one
Yeah,
championship, and I don't know how heavy they want to get into combat sports anymore. I thought Prime was kind of like really getting into it, but I mean they're doing something with PBC, but I know it's not anything that it's just kind of like sure we'll give you
I'd
guys
like
a
to see
shot.
them just really go hard with their app and with YouTube,
Hmm.
because everybody has YouTube.
Hmm.
Everybody understands YouTube
Yeah.
now. There's no complications with it. It doesn't seem to be going anywhere. If
I
it was
think they
going to,
sold, and I could be wrong, but I don't know where I saw the number. The $29.99 pay per view that they sold, the BKFC events. We're supposed to be talking about UFC, but it's hard not to go back to it. But and that was Antoine's question that steered us back to BKFC. But that $29.99 pay per view, I saw numbers of like 12 million or so that they sold that night for folks that wanted to watch it, because the price, not for nothing, $29.99. If you were sitting home Saturday night and you had cash but no place to go, no friends, whatever the fuck, you bought, you know what I'm saying? You bought that pay per view. And if you're into fights at all, you're like, let me watch this shit. I mean, I actually missed the days when you could buy UFC pay-per-views on YouTube. I remember I remember my buddy having an issue ordering through Verizon, and I was like, yo, you could buy it on YouTube. And that's how we watched it. So like YouTube they have the model to do it. I don't understand.
yeah, I don't know, but I think that I don't even remember how we got here, but that's where I would, that's where I'd like to see BKFC focus. Let's try to talk about 301 because there's not a lot to
Yeah,
talk about. I'm not gonna, we never sugarcoat anything here. This is not a pay per view that I will be purchasing. I'm actually going to a concert this Saturday night. Um, so I will be with Bone Thugs and Harmony in Cypress Hill on Saturday,
word, that's what's up.
and
Yo, dude, and Walker, you hear that?
and while you guys can watch this, and I'll catch up on Jose Aldo later in the
I'll probably
evening.
watch it like after the fact. I mean, there's fights that if there's a good chance that I won't have anything to do and I'll wind up watching it anyway. But I mean, for the main event, let's just because Antoine's asking, do you think Alexander can become the second greatest flyweight of all time? Man, I mean,
Are we? Are
like,
we? I guess the question would be: Are we? We're assuming Mighty Mouse is one, right?
yeah.
I mean, I don't even know
Mm.
anymore, like exactly,
For
because
me, it is
everybody
Mighty
can become
Mouse.
the goat. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, I guess, dude. Like, but I don't think it matters because then the guy after him will just pass him. If we're
Mm-hmm.
gonna get to the point where everybody can become the greatest, I mean, I guess to me, greatness isn't always just wins and losses. To me, greatness is like what they bring to the sport.
Hmm.
Pound for pound wise, yeah, he might work his way up there. He still has 5 losses. Um, Always going to be tough to get by some of those, but if he goes on a nice run, then yeah,
Yeah.
in the what have you done for me lately? Yeah, he can, heck, he can be considered the greatest. He gets about 4 or 5 title defenses, and
Mm-hmm.
nobody, Mighty Mouse will be wiped off the map too. Sadly,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, in a lot of aspects, but I got to be honest, I don't know a lot about his opponent. I know he just joined the UFC about a year ago.
Is ranked number 10 according to their website, 12-1 from Australia. There's no odds listed for this fight. I mean,
He looks like he doesn't look in his picture
not a
or
lot of
like
odds.
so yeah, I don't know, but I just, it's not the,
He looks like Luigi Primo.
it's hard with this coming off of 300 too, because it's like, wow. I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess I'm gonna pick Pantoja to win because he seems, I mean, he is a great fighter. And I just don't know about his opponent enough to pick him. Um, I I don't know. It's just it is it's where we're at with this fight. But
Oh,
it's
here
a
we
fight that
go.
had to happen based off of the,
Panto is the favorite of the Antoine
that
just looked
makes
it up.
sense.
Yeah.
And the money's going to be based off popularity and who knows who. And if you're in Vegas, Pantoja's the name, if you're throwing money in
Mm-hmm.
casinos,
Yeah.
moving those odds around. So that makes sense. Hopefully it's a great fight. I mean, it's pay-per-view. Hopefully for the people of Brazil, it's a good
Well,
fight.
you have to remember that's one thing that the stigma that if folks haven't learned by now, with as long as how the UFC's been around, when people are shitting on cards like the way they're shitting on this card, they usually wind up being pretty worthwhile. That's one thing that seems to be always a constant. But this card is definitely. I mean, I understand where it's where the attitude of it is coming from, but I mean, Jose Aldo is on it as a co-main event. I mean, it's hard to pick against him fighting in Brazil.
Yeah,
Like.
yeah, okay. Jose being on the card makes it this fight, must see
Mhm,
because it's Jose Aldo and it's a
mhm,
retirement fight apparently. Um, the thing that hurts is hearing the rumor that it was going to be Dominic Cruz, because
mhm,
then all of a sudden you have a fight that would be like, okay, this is two legends fighting for legacy. It would be the Stipe John Jones fight
mhm.
for the smaller weight classes, essentially. But excuse me. But again, I'm not picking against Jose Aldo. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I don't think the UFC in their mind thinks that Jose Aldo is going to lose this fight because they don't want him to lose. He's in Brazil. It's his final fight.
Yeah.
They're not stupid. So unless he shows up out of shape, which would be out of character, unless he shows up with a terrible game plan, which would be out of character, unless he just shows up not wanting to be there, which would be out of character, then I don't see how Jose Aldo loses to Jonathan Martinez.
Yeah. And this one, man,
It's a good
Anthony,
fight.
it's a good fight.
It's a
It's
good fight.
it's a good fight, but I'm shaking my head because Anthony Smith is the underdog. I feel like the guy's always fighting an uphill battle as long as he's been in the UFC. Um,
But he has 19 losses, dude. I
yeah.
mean, I know what you're saying, but he doesn't have a history of long winning streaks. He had a nice run where it got him a title shot, but he's
Mm-hmm.
going up against an undefeated younger fighter. I just think that there comes a point where
Mm.
a fighter
Reminds
like
me.
Anthony Smith can become a punching bag real quick if he's not careful.
This is an interesting stat that Antoine check Tapology is 1,000 picks for the fight, and it's literally 50-50. I'm assuming he's talking about Urseg Pantoja. I mean,
That's odd.
yeah.
If that's the case and people legitimately think that, then with the odds that you're showing us, I would definitely put money on Ursig. I mean, if
Mm,
if if he's that live of a dog in people's mind and they got him at a 3-1 underdog, yeah, that's the bet to make. I just don't know enough about him personally to see him beating a reigning defending champion.
yeah.
Michael Pereira's always Michelle Pereira's
The flips. Yeah.
always fun to watch. Um, Podieria, his Ukrainian opponent, is a guy I don't root for after his showboating annex after he beat Shogun Hua. So he's always going to be kind of somebody I'm
Oh,
not
is
going to.
that who he is? I didn't
Yeah,
even. Yeah.
and Paul Craig, Barhalo is another good fight. Um, it's hard to make picks on these.
Yeah.
Paul Craig takes punches. If it turns into a grappling match, he's got a shot, but he takes a lot of damage. So I figure he probably gets TKO'd here.
Barala looks like a video game, like one of the Double Dragon thugs that you have to fight off in Double Dragon within this picture. I
So
mean, it has nothing to do with his fighting. He's a favorite at -360, but I just felt like that's an interesting picture they picked. But Paul
yeah,
Gregg's been around for a while too. So,
now really looking at the card now, there's going to be some fun fights. I see some
mhm,
finishes in the future. Um, it just lacks heavy coming off of 300 again.
mhm.
Cole Cavage on the prelims.
It's funny I
You
mentioned Ant Walker. MMA on Point put up an interesting graphic where they were just like, you look at the ranked fighters and who's on who was on 300 versus the ranked fighters and who's on this card, and it's very lopsided. But again, that goes to my point when I mentioned my buddy asking about John Jones fighting. They're looking to they're looking to to pump up. They want to have their quarterly numbers with their mega events every quarter. I mean, you got to remember the UFC is 1,000% a giant corporation now. TKO, they're already letting WWE use the Apex in June. You know what I mean? Like it's company planning. You got these $1 million executives looking at making sure they get their one mega event every quarter, their WrestleMania, their Money in the Bank, whatever you want to call it. That's what we're gonna get with these with fights like this. So this fight, it makes sense that it's a little bit the air is leaving the
Well,
room
yeah,
because
and 298, 299, and 300 were all loaded cards. So there's going to be
mm,
a hit on the backside, and now you've got this one getting a hit. The McGregor card's not going to be hefty, so that'll be another one that's going to, essentially allow for them to have the mega cards. 302 is a decent card out in your neck of the woods, but nothing
mhm.
over the top. So I
I
don't know.
think he
We'll see.
wants to know who's on it. Let me. Antoine's chiming in asking. I'll bring it up really quick because I
On
know
which card?
302. Um, I did. I got the press release for it, but the card wasn't full. That was, when they announced it officially, and that's like maybe 3 episodes ago for us. Uh, I'll bring it up. Let me just so we could glance it over real quick. Makachev Poirier, Strickland Costa.
Yeah,
couple of
I might take back what I just said. It's a little bit lacking.
Nico Price, Shelton Almeida,
Uh,
um,
there's a couple
Roman
fights.
Dolidze. Yeah,
That
no, yeah,
fight's off. Anthony Hernandez is out, so that's just not updated.
yeah, yeah, because they're focusing on this one. Yeah,
Top two
yeah,
fights are really good, but again, it's these ones are going to take a little bit of a hit. It's the depth on the main card
yeah.
that's
I'm
getting
just
ate up.
I'm surprised. I could have sworn they were gonna put maybe they're saving him for November. I guess I could have sworn they were gonna put Marshall on this. Uh, but no, he's the only Jersey guy that I off the top of my head, Mickey Gall. Interesting. Um,
Yeah, the Randy Brown Dos Santos fight will be good. Um, yeah, I mean there's a few fights, but we're gonna have to get down from the high of 300 and realize that you know
mhm.
that's
We're
the,
not
the
always gonna
the
get those.
the
Yeah.
depth's not gonna be there. Not so much the mega fights, but the depth
hmm
of top to bottom is not gonna be there. So, anyways, yeah. So UFC this Saturday, pay per view, normal time. There's a one championship, as we said, on Friday night on Prime.
hmm
Um, and I think that pretty much wraps us up. Fans can check out the show at Combat Hour on Twitter, Coast to Coast Combat Hour on Instagram. Follow me, Matthew Hawkins, at MMA Hawk 21 on Twitter and Instagram. Follow Ed at Carbazol on Twitter, Carbeerzol on Instagram, and Old Head Carb on Twitch. Thanks for listening, and have a good night, everyone.
Peace.